We've been working through nouns this semester, and hard to believe now, we've covered 12 chapters already. First couple were just learning the alphabet and some basic ideas of pronunciation, syllabification. But now, since chapter 5, we've been working on nouns. We've thought about the genitive and dative, nominative, accusative, the four cases. Today we'll see another case, the vocative, and we'll think about especially pronouns, demonstrative pronouns, and how they can also act as adjectives. When you hear the word demonstrative, what other English word do you hear? Yes, demonstrate. Demonstrative pronouns are pronouns used when someone is wanting to demonstrate something. We think in terms of this item or that item, these or those. And in Greek, that's hutos and akenos. These pronouns follow the 2-1-2 pattern. Let's review our declensions for just a moment here. First declension, nouns, stems end in, yes, alpha or eta. Second declension, omicron. And third declension, stems end in a consonant. And hutos and akenos follow the 2-1-2 pattern. Here's the full paradigm of hutos. You can see how regular it is with the 2-1-2 pattern. Nothing new at the end of these words in this paradigm. Everything is consistent. The only thing we need to beware of is how, especially in the nominative singular and plural, hutos behaves compared to the genitive, dative, and accusative, singular and plural, in both the masculine and feminine. You can notice that. Notice nominative, masculine, singular, hutos, and nominative, feminine, singular, chaute, and nominative, masculine, plural, hutoi, nominative, feminine, plural, chautai, and yet the rest of the paradigm, what's the first letter in each word? It's a tau. It's not a vowel, but a consonant, a tau. But in the nominative, singular and plural, masculine and feminine, the form is without the tau. So once you have that exception down, the paradigm flows fairly naturally. Look just at the feminine, the first declension here, ending in eta, chaute, and then tautes, taute, tautain, chautai. Notice, though, the exception with the genitive plural, and we're mindful that in the 2-1-2 paradigm, there's absolute consistency with the genitive plural across the board. And as Mounce notes in the nominative, or excuse me, in the genitive, dative, and accusative, both singular and plural, the final vowel, be it omega or alpha eta, determines then the initial vowel, and that's the case here with the genitive plural. So two-tone is tau, omicron, upsilon, and not in the feminative, and not tau, alpha, upsilon, because the final vowel is omicron lengthened to omega. And then if you look at the dative plural feminine, tautais, and we can see that again, tau, the tau alpha follows the latter tau alpha in the same word, in the two syllables, tautais and tautos. So again, the final vowel determines the initial vowel. Thus the difference between genitive and dative plural in the feminine there. And you can see the absolute consistency again with genitive plural, and that's why. But across the board otherwise, the consistency again. The final vowel determines the initial vowel. Now think about translation for a moment, and I've placed here in the paradigm masculine all the way down this thing, this man, this one, this item, and the demonstrative, this thing is what you're talking about. An advertiser would say, this product, this book, this car, this ball, this house. And then it would agree with the item, obviously, in its case and number and gender. So two-tone is genitive, masculine, feminine, or neuter. We'd put in all three gender options, and then plural from hutos, meaning of these. So nominative this, genitive of this, dative to this, accusative this, nominative plural these, genitive plural of these, dative plural to these, accusative plural, again, these as a direct object. And the pronoun can be used again for any gender. Hutos, this one or these. Akanos, that or those. Similar here across the board, the exact 2-1-2 pattern. And you can remember our noun rules, the similarity with genitive and dative, masculine and neuter, both singular and plural. The neuter, nominative, accusative, singular, nominative, accusative, plural. Consistency with the genitive plural across the board. Akanos, then look at the masculines, follow it all the way down. Akanos, that. Akanu, akano, to that. Akanon, akanoi, those. Akanon, of those. Akanois, to those. Akanus, those. Again, case number and gender and lexical form, inflected meaning. In translation, kanane, it's accusative, feminine singular from akanos, meaning that, and a feminine direct object. Characteristics of demonstrative pronouns. These pronouns take the place of a noun. And as we've noted already, this man or one, and context identifies who the antecedent is. So they take the place of a noun. They function as a noun. So they may be followed by a verb, or they may have a verb precede them in Greek word order, but there would be a verb they would agree with, and they would function as a substantive. They would act as a noun. They can also act as adjectives. In this case, again, they agree in case, number, and gender with the noun they would modify. They're always in the predicate position if they're an adjective. They do not have the article. That's what we mean by predicate position. They're not the subject with the article. They would not have an article, and they would agree in case, number, and gender. So if we see hutos or akanos, we're looking around to notice in the sentence if there is a noun that would agree in case, number, and gender, and if the pronoun though would be an adjective, it would have to be anarthrous without an article. And it may be the case that the noun has the article or may not. But especially if it does have the article, then we know that the pronoun would be acting as an adjective. We introduced just earlier here the idea of vocative as another case. There are 4 cases in Greek: nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, and a couple of others that we don't talk about quite as much. These four are our main constituents, but the vocative is the final case that we'll learn in elementary Greek, and it's the case of address. So technically we say there are 5 cases we learn in elementary Greek. Generally we deal with just 4, but this 5th case is important, and it's important for knowing God's Word and exegesis and translation. It is the case of address. It's a case of discourse where there is speech going on. When a person or object is being directly addressed, the vocative is often used. Matthew 7:21, Upas ha legon moi, Kyrie, Kyrie, eseliusatai, estain basilean ton uranon. For not the one saying to me, Kyrie, Kyrie, Lord, Lord. And this is an example of the vocative. In the plural, the vocative is always identical to the nominative plural. So whatever the nominative plural is, in the third declension here, andres, the vocative is always identical to the nominative plural. In the singular first declension, and those again are stems ending in alpha or eta, the vocative is the same as the nominative. You can see psuche here. Again, this is the feminine gender. In the second declension, the singular, stems ending in omega, the vocative ending is usually epsilon. Anthrope. Here, man, your sins are forgiven you. Anthrope. Some translations of Luke 5:20 have friend. In the singular third declension, stems ending in a consonant, the vocative normally ends with the bare stem. Pater. This is the Lord's Prayer, the disciples' prayer. Pater hemon cha entois uranois, hagias theto ta anamasu. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Pater. Sometimes vocative will be preceded by an O kind of translation. OH in English is how we would translate that as, oh this person or oh this thing. So that's the general scope of the vocative. You will pick these out as you begin to translate, and you'll recognize them with a high degree of consistency. They're noticeable, they stand out as you're reading and as you translate. We want to think as well about the adjective much or many, palus, and here's the full paradigm. Again, follows the 2-1-2 pattern. The nominative masculine and neuter singular, and the masculine nominative and accusative, or rather the accusative singular as well as the neuter nominative accusative singular, both have a single lambda. You will notice that just briefly here, but as you read, you'll just become accustomed to it, and you'll recognize the word. And once you see it with just the upsilon as the final letter, you'll recognize, okay, that's nominative neuter singular. But that will be really the only one that would be much of a problem for you as you go. Just recognize the nominative and accusative neuter singular ending in upsilon. When you have just one lambda there, you'll recognize it as palus, and double lambda. Otherwise, in the nominative and accusative masculine singular, palus and paloon, the ending of sigma and nu will cue you to their number and case. Mounce notes that Paulus figures in some ways as both a sort of a combination of second and third declension. And you can see that especially with the sigma in the nominative singular. Otherwise, pretty standard across the first declension and many of the other cases. You're probably noticing that so much of the patterns of both first and second and third declension nouns, I should say all three of those, they follow with such stability that you're able to recognize them, and even if you couldn't reproduce the paradigm, you can get to case, number, and gender pretty easily after just thinking for a couple of moments about the ending of the word and see where it would fit. Well, some vocab. Gune, gynecology, woman or wife, gune. You notice here that obviously a feminine word, but what's the final stem letter? It's a kappa, that's a consonant, so it follows a third declension paradigm even though it's feminine. For all of our talk about consistency in Greek, there are some exceptions at times, but we're thankful they're few and far between, aren't we? Kago, it's a crasis. It's a combining or a crashing together of two words. Kai and ego means and I or but I, kago. Finally, pos is a question. It's an interrogative. My bridge is suppose. I hear pos and I easily hear suppose. Suppose, well, how would that be done? Or how? How could that be? Suppose this, how? It's an interrogative, pos. Again, as I've stated before, morning and evening with Greek. At least 15 minutes in the morning, perhaps 30 if you can, at least 30 minutes in the evening, up to an hour. If you just do that, 5 days a week, 4 at absolute minimum to be successful in Greek. Reviewing, doing some vocab, some translation, parsing in each of those sessions. Just do a bit of each, and you will begin to recognize more and more forms as we go. Again, we've already covered the 4 cases, and now the 5th, the vocative, though it's less frequent. It's still an important concept to have down. We have thought about first and second person personal pronouns, ego and su. We've thought about the third person pronoun, autos, and now demonstratives. Koutos, this one, these, kainos, that one, those.